Kojo Bonsu.
Yeah. Kojo Bonsu, was the mayor for Kumasi.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, he was the acting chair of the Goil board. Until we left office. And so he ran, and then Dr. Dufo, who had been former governor of the Bank of Ghana, and then afterwards Minister of Finance. He also ran. There was a third person, Kobia, I think. He came from the UK. But he later withdrew and threw his support behind me. So it was a 3-horse race. But it went well.
Oh, well. So, will you consider appointing Kojo if you should be president?
Oh, we've put the primaries behind us.
Okay.
And actually, I was discussing with the chairman of the party, Asedun Ketia, to begin moves to bring everybody together. We're asking for a reconciliation at all levels at which elections were held. We started from the branch to the constituency, and then to regional, and then to national. And so at any such reorganization or election, people win, people lose. But what you need to do is when you win, you must bring everybody on board. So I cannot ask them to reconcile at those levels, and I don't reconcile at the presidential level. And so we'll stretch a hand out to Dr. Dufo and Kojo Bonsu.
Okay.
And then to my brother who withdrew and to his support behind me. I don't think there's a problem.
Great. I want to go back again, staying further back, 2016. And I'm going to your concession speech. There's something you said in your concession speech that I always remember. You said, posterity will be the judge of my time. Now my question is, were you saying that because you believe that so much mud had been thrown on you? Mahama became synonymous with the word incompetence. There was so much mud slung on you.
Not because I believe. Everybody knows in Ghana that 2016 was a peculiar election. NDC had been in office for 8 years, but I had been president for only 4 years. And so as president, I was entitled to a second term. But if I got a second term, then it means NDC would have been in office for 12 years. And so NPP were determined to dislodge us at that election.
So
anything was fair game for them. And they realized that the only thing standing between them and victory was my persona. And so just destroy Mahama as much as possible. And so they told all kinds of lies about me, about stealing money, corruption, hotels in Dubai. I mean, they all proved not to be true. But at the time, it was difficult to dispel, because they had a troll factory that was churning out all kinds of misinformation. And that's why I said posterity will be the judge of my time in office. Because we know that vindication lies in the womb of time. And with time, the truth would always come out.
Do you feel vindicated?
Of course. Any human being will feel vindicated. I mean, the kind of lies that were told about me, I went out of office. I've been in this country. I was hoping that they would carry out some investigations into all the allegations they made about me. I actually challenged them. After I left office, I said, all the things you said, DKM belonged to me. I had a hotel in Dubai, ships in Tokyo Harbor. Me and my wife had transferred World Bank money into Swiss bank accounts. I said, I'm here, I'm waiting. Just come and investigate me. And nothing. So I have the right to feel vindicated. Just that the situation in which we are, the situation into which they have plunged this country is not the time for gloating and saying, I told you so. So we just do
deep inside,
what we have to do.
You have the feeling of I told you so? I mean, Ghanaians are saying, well, we sold our color TV and bought the black and white. Is that your feeling? Yeah, because
NPP came in with a lot of propaganda, and they were prepared to promise heaven in order to win political power. And so a lot of the promises that they made, and it was like, just promise anything. I mean, I was watching a video of John Boydu saying, oh, is it about jobs? If it's about jobs, don't worry. There'll be so much jobs that Ghanaians can't do it. We'll have to go and bring foreigners to come and work. to fill the rest of the vacancies. I mean, today, this is the highest level of unemployment in the history of Ghana. And so it was just say anything and win political power. But unfortunately, they have created a crisis of confidence in the population, in our democracy. Because now it's easy for Ghanaians to think that, look, politicians are liars, they'll just lie for political power. And then some people say, look, every 4 years we have to go and vote. I don't see what I benefit from the voting because it doesn't make any change in my life. And that is what this 8 years of NPP government has created. We need to rebuild that confidence in our democracy. We need to convince Ghanaians that democratic governments are still the best way to unleash the creativity of our people and be able to create prosperity for our people.
Listening to you talking about the state that Ghana is in now reminds me of 2020 election when you actually dubbed your campaign the rescue mission.
Yes.
You know, it was like Ghana is so bad, it needs to be rescued. So it's called the rescue mission. That was from the View and the NDC. And the NPP too was saying 4 more for Nana. And Your Excellency, at the end of the day, Ghanaians decided 4 more. So do you think Ghanaians didn't feel that there was a need to be rescued, or your communication was faulty? What happened?
Our communication was spot on because we could see what was coming. We could see it. Immediately we finished the election 2021, electricity tariffs that were free before the elections were put back. And then government immediately introduced an NHIL levy. We have gone through a pandemic. And we come out of the pandemic and you are charging us for the pandemic. And when we ask, what's the NHIL levy for? It says, oh, you think the free water and the free light you enjoyed and the vaccinations we brought in and all that were free. So it was just a grand deception of the people. But we could tell, I mean, this government was headed for this crisis. One, because all the buffers we built, they used them and did not replenish. We had a sinking fund in which we left money, part of which they used to pay the COFO Eurobond. And then there was money left over. Any debts that were coming, they were paying. But we were committing a certain portion of the annual budget funding amount, that is the oil revenues, into the sinking fund for debt repayment. When they exhausted the sinking fund, they abandoned it and didn't put any money there again. So all the $3 billion they used to go and borrow $3 billion every year, they didn't spare a mind to put at least a bit in the sinking fund so that they could use it to pay off some of the urgent debts that were accumulated. Then we also left money in the Ghana Infrastructure Investment Fund, $270 million, I remember. They came and just used it. We left money in the stabilization fund. That's what bailed them out in the COVID period when there was no money anywhere and government didn't have a budget to handle COVID. We told them, look in the stabilization fund. That is what it was meant for, emergencies like this. And so they went and took 200 and something million from the stabilization fund. Now today, all those buffers did not exist. They had misused them. And then they had pushed our public debt from 120 billion to 577 billion. And so we had cautioned them. In 2019, I criticized the Minister of Finance. Our minority criticized him for the rate at which he was borrowing and said that, look, if you don't do something about it, we'll face a debt crisis in future. The records are all there. If you look at it, you'll find it. But apart from that, this Minister of Finance was doing something that I would say is criminal, because he presents the budget statement, and then there are liabilities he knows are public liabilities, and yet he doesn't factor them into the budget. So the banking sector clean out, you say it costs you 22 billion. So it meant that government had to pay depositors 22 billion. Whose liability is it? He says no, there are receivers who are chasing people who owe the banks, and so we'll use that money to pay the depositors. But I mean, how much have the receivers been able to collect? I don't think they've collected even more than 1 billion CDs. And yet government has guaranteed all deposits, and so have put the deposits of those people's accounts into CBG and has paid them. And so it is a government liability. ESLA, we introduced ESLA. It started in October, and then they took it over in January. the inflows that ESLA was supposed to receive to pay off legacy energy sector debt and petroleum sector debt, they created an SPV, a special purpose vehicle, like a company. And then they made the company borrow money against the ESLA revenues. So now a lot of the ESLA revenues are collateralized, they're encumbered, because they've taken that money and they've spent it. And so that also is a liability. Who owns ESLA SPV? Government of Ghana. Then energy sector debt to IPPs. Today, I hear they owe them almost 1.8 billion. But at that time, they owed them over 1 billion. So all these debts, including Get Fund, the collateralized Get Fund for about $1.5 billion, all these debts he puts as appendixes in the budget, but does not factor them into his accounting numbers. And so when he tells you he has a budget deficit of less than 5%, he's actually deceiving you. And he was doing that to create a better picture so that he could borrow more money off the market. Out of the issues of conflict of interest, his own bank being the broker and all that, I mean, those are all ethical issues that are clear to anybody.
Yeah. How does that make you feel then about this? Because sometimes I reverse things. And some of these things that you're talking about that happened under the NPP, if it was the NDC in power, what kind of opposition do you think we would have expected from them? Was the opposition a bit too laid back? Because you are naming all these things and they happened in the glaring eyes of all Ghanaians and the recognized opposition. And for example, people are saying, you know, they're even accusing you. And I said, John should be up and shaking things.
Actually, this government has had an easy pass when it comes to issues of governance. Because if I did 1/10 of what they have done these last 8 years, I'm sure that I would have been pilloried and crucified on a cross by now, you know. I mean, but it's also partly, there's a bit of hypocrisy in it, you know. There were a lot of people who were very vocal, not necessarily the opposition alone. There were clergymen, there were media people who won't give us any breathing space, you know. And of course, the NPP as a party also added theirs. And then they had organizations like Occupy Ghana, which are civil society organizations that were also breathing down our neck.
Yeah.
And so this trio symphony orchestra of people kept up such a cacophony about us, you know, a lot of it based on misinformation. But they did it to deadly effect. And so if it was us that did 1/10 of this, you know, I'm sure that would have been pilloried. Right now, a lot of them give them an easy pass because I do think that some of them are ashamed and some of them probably have an inclination or a soft spot for the NPP. And so when NPP is in government, anything can pass. But when it's another party in government, then suddenly they find their voices and start speaking. And
so let's imagine for some reason John Mahama is returned to power and the NDC in power, and these same voices that you're saying were very loud under your regime now come back out loud again. How would you react?
Well, I don't mind. I'll welcome it because...
you welcome it?
Yeah, it makes us perform better. All that criticism actually encouraged me to do better. For instance, take the Doom song. All the noise about Doom song. You know, I went to Parliament and I said, yes, I take responsibility for it. I'm going to work day and night to fix this problem. And it occupied most of my time. And eventually we fixed it. In 2016 January, we canceled the load shedding. So there was no more rationing of power. So the whole of 2016, nobody had any load shedding based on any schedule, you know. And so criticism helps you be a better person if it's constructive. A lot of it was destructive, but it doesn't matter. It's still criticism. It makes you want to prove your critics wrong by doing even better. Why Nana Addo has performed so abysmally is that he got an easy pass and they develop a certain sense of impunity. And they believe that whatever they do, nobody's going to talk. And so it makes them do the kind of things. It makes the society numb to all the scandals, because every week there's a scandal. And so people get fed up of talking about it and say, look, there's nothing you're going to say that will change this Bawumia administration. So just leave it. It's 1.5 years to election. Let's just bear it out and wait it out. But that's the beauty of democracy, that you get the opportunity to change governments at a point in time. And I think that people are just waiting to take their time and go to the voting booths.
People might have thought the same for the last election, that hey, there's no way on earth, the way Ghana has gone through, that anybody will consider giving 4 more to Nana. But people went to the booth and came out that the NPP won.
That is because Ghanaians have a conception that 4 years is not enough to see where government is taking things. And so even though we're raising the red flag and saying that, look, they're mismanaging the economy, there's going to be a crisis ahead and all that, Ghanaians were willing to give them the benefit of the doubt. And that's how come they say, okay, let's give him another 4 years and let's see, he probably will do better. But our worst fears have been realized with what has just happened. Because by 2020, they knew the economy was in crisis. The economy was in crisis before 2020.
I'll get back to that, but let me ask this question here in terms of Ghanaians have been saying, and you actually implied it when you said that we have the mentality that each party is entitled to 8 years. Okay? So, in a way, it even affected you, because even though it was your second term, it was the 8 years of NDC. So they wouldn't. What would happen if NPP in fact breaks the 8? How would you react?
Well, there'll be a breaking of the 8, but there will be a breaking of 8 years of corruption, 8 years of arrogance, 8 years of impunity. That's what's going to break 8. So there'll be a breaking of the 8. Ghanaians are going to break that 8.
You're very, very sure.
Oh, there'll be a breaking of the 8.
Yeah.
But the breaking of the 8 is going to be the breaking of the maladministration that Ghanaians have been through these last 8 years. It's going to break. There's going to be a new dawn.
What's your confidence level?
I'm highly confident. Since I ran for the primaries, it gave me the opportunity to go around the country. And it has put me in the position to get to know the challenges that Ghanaians are handling. And speaking to farmers, to taxi drivers, to market women, to everybody. I mean, they are at the stage where a last straw will just break their backs.
You did a similar tour though, 2020. Yeah, 2020. Listening tour, I think that's what it was called.
Yeah,
and you went around.
It was called a speak out.
Yeah, speak out.
No, call it speak out.
Okay.
That was to do with our manifesto. We wanted to incorporate the thinking of the people in our manifesto. And so we said, look, we're going to write our manifesto in a different way. We're not just going to get a few technocrats to sit and write our manifesto. We're going to go around and listen to the people. So we went to all the regions and listened to all the people. And Ghana varies in many ways. You go to some region and it's more about agriculture. You go to another region, the issues are about mining and galamsey and things. You go to another place and it's about markets and commerce and things like that. If you go to Techiman, it's the biggest market in Ghana. It's about markets and trading and commerce and all that. You go to another place and the challenges are about roads. Western region and Western North. Roads are their main thing, And so we said, look, let's go listen to everybody. We listened to Guta, we met with Abosokai, spare parts dealers, we met with Ghana Bar Association, everybody. And then we crystallized all that into the People's Manifesto. And that is the manifesto we ran on in 2020. So that tour was called the Speak Out Tour.
Okay.
But it was meant to input into our manifesto. But this was to do with the primaries. And this was meeting mainly our party people. But in many places, the townspeople will not allow only our party people to attend. They force their ways into the venue and say they are all involved in this matter. You can't call just your 9-member executive and come and talk to them. We also want to be part of this. We want to be heard. And so in many places, the townspeople turn it into a rally.